So, what's the difference between God's will and my will or your will? Well, in my experience, I'll talk about what my experience is. Some of you know I have struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. I'm working a 12-step program right now, and one of the steps that we work on is giving our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand Him. I call Him God. It can be, whatever you believe is your higher power. But for me, I call that God. And so when I think about God's will for me and versus my will, a lot of times I thought in the past that I was following God's will. I was doing the things that God wanted me to do, but I didn't realize it was kind of a one-way street. I was only accepting of doing the things that I thought God wanted me to do when they seemed like they were going to turn out to be positive things for myself. Self-seeking. So as much as it felt like I was doing God's will, it was still just my will. It was something that I was getting, I was receiving out of it. It wasn't necessarily something that I was giving or giving away. And I was no expectation in return. I think that's a big part of it. Is if you expect something in return in the endeavors that you're doing, you're probably, a lot of times, for myself at least, you're operating on your will because you're looking at it kind of like a point scoring system. Like, okay, well, if I do this thing, then I'm going to get something else in return. If I help this person out, I'm going to get something else in return. And for me, I have to, again, to follow God's will, I have to get rid of myself in the situation. Now, we do talk about things like putting your own oxygen mask on, right, before you can help someone else. So there's bare bones things that you need to take care of yourself. But what I'm talking about are the moments when you are called to do something that it might threaten your survival for a second, let's just say, or threaten your financial security, threaten the level of just comfort that you have, but it's going to help other people. You might not be even rewarded for it. You might not be rewarded for it financially. It might be something that costs you money. So it's definitely not a selfish endeavor. You're spending money. That's where a lot of the giving happens, right? I donate money or I donate whatever, donate time, donate effort, and you're not expecting anything in return because it's going one way and it's not coming back. The opposite way is when you're doing things and it's all getting in return. And this is where I thought I was before. I was doing things in my life and it was working out for me. Things were going well. And so I was receiving. So I was like, oh, this is great. If I follow God's will, I'm going to get things in return. What I found now is that might be true in some situations, but it's not true in other situations. And I have to be accepting of the fact that things aren't always going to work out for me, for what I want. Sometimes I'm going to do things and it's going to turn into disaster. But what I've found, and this is the real key, and this is the real reason why I wanted to make this video, was the difference between my will and God's will is when I'm in God's will, I have a greater level of acceptance for when things go bad. Previously, because at some point, things aren't going to go your way. So if you feel like, oh, everything's working out, at some point there's going to be challenge. At some point there's going to be something that happens and you don't get anything in return. Well, then what? Well, when I was in my will, I would get angry. I have a lot of anger problems. I would get angry at the world. I would get angry at other people. I would get angry at myself. And I wouldn't be accepting of the situation. My emotions, my physical state, my mental state, it would be damaged. I would be hurt. Well, when I'm in God's will, when things like that happen, because they're going to happen, nothing always goes perfectly. I have a more accepting frame of mind. I can understand the bigger picture. Or if I don't understand it, I can just accept it how it is when I'm following God's will. This is something that I have to practice every single day and multiple times throughout the day because I struggle with it. It's a big struggle. I want things for myself. It's human nature to be selfish. Our needs are to propagate our genes, to survive and replicate, propagate our genes so that we can have little me's running around and that can continue along the process. That's hardwired in our DNA. So for us, the concept of God and the concept of something greater than ourselves is a challenge in itself. To be able to give to other people and not expect anything in return is a challenge in and of itself. So for me, but what I found is when I do that and I continually trust God and I let my will go to him, hey, what do you want me to do? And I feel that calling, that pulling. And sometimes that pulling is not a good feeling. It's like, oh man, this is going to be challenging. A lot of times that's what it is. This is going to suck. This isn't going to be the most fun thing in the world. I feel that pull. They call it the comfort zone, getting outside of your comfort zone. I feel like those moments now I'm more accepting of. Whereas before, I wouldn't be accepting. I would feel that comfort zone, get right to the edge of it, maybe do some things outside the comfort zone, see some results and be like, oh, okay, that worked out. But then the next time, get outside my comfort zone, oh, it didn't work for me, okay, that's over. Whereas when I follow God's will, I get outside my comfort zone, something challenging happens, I accept it, or it doesn't go my way, I accept it. And so I think on the grand scheme of things, on the average, things will work out for you in the end. The story of Job, right? Where he trusts God and then God gambles with him, with Satan, and then he destroys his life and everything gets worse and worse and worse, but he keeps his faith in God and then God gives him everything back and doubles it, right? So that story in the long term, in the short term, all right, it was not going well. He was doing everything right and it was hurting him. It was hurting him to the nth degree. I mean, if you read that story, it's crazy what ends up happening. But on the long end, it ends up being returned to him. Now, I don't think that that's a guarantee for everyone, but I feel like for myself, at least where I'm at right now, although things aren't, that's what I was getting frustrated with the other day. I was like, I'm doing all the right things and nothing's changing. Now, things are changing. Things that I'm maybe not on the physical realm, things are changing, but things are changing. My perspective was off because I was in my will. But when I kind of shifted over into God's will, and I do that through prayer, I do that through meditation, I do that through, listening to other people, getting outside of myself, helping other people, I started to see, oh, there is some changes in myself, but I'm more accepting of it, even if the situation doesn't change. Even if I don't see those changes, I'm accepting of it when I connect to God's will. Okay, well, what do you want? Maybe God says, I want you to wait. Maybe I want you to do this thing and not get anything in return. It's hard for me to accept that, but especially when I'm in my will. But if I lean into God's will and I say, okay, I trust you, I trust that there's some bigger picture here, okay, then I tend to fade away. And I think that's part of life is instead of it being a selfish endeavor about me, it's about we, as corny as that sounds, and giving my will and my life over to God really means I'm giving it out to everyone else around me. I'm giving it out to the world. And I think that's really what life is all about, because really, if you have a gift, it's to be shared. If you have a talent, it's to be used to, again, whether let's just say it's like a singing talent where you're this talented person and you have this thing. When you sing, you give to other people around you. Okay, think about Michael Jackson. The gift that he gave to no wonder why the guy was so loved. It was given to so many different people. And I think that's the key to life is if you have something, give it away. And when you're constantly wanting to take or have a transactional basis of, well, I gave you this, you give me back in return. I want equal. I've been giving this to all these people, and I'm only getting this in return. I think we end up always in a suffering frame of mind where, like I said before, for me at least, when I accept, I have a more accepting way of thinking about things when I let go and let God, as cliche as that sounds. When I let it go into God's will, I'm more accepting of these things and I feel better. Instead of suffering, I have peace. And for me, that's what it's all about. I want that peace of mind. And that was the change that I noticed. When I said, oh, my outside circumstances aren't changing. What's going on? I'm doing everything right, but nothing's changing. What I didn't realize was I have this sense of peace about me. That's really what I want. I have this sense of peace. Even though things aren't changing, it's the same life. I was not peaceful before at all. At all. I had so much chaos going in my head, so much anger all the time. But I have this peace now. I have this acceptance of things. And so I took a step back and I go, oh, okay, well, I should probably lean into that. And then I leaned into that some more. And I'm going to be donating my time and giving my time to a project on something. And it's like, I'm not going to get anything in return for this. I'm going to have to spend money, spend time, spend effort, okay, and get nothing in return. Who knows? Maybe I do get something in return, but I'm not coming from that place. And when I lean into that, I get peace. When I don't lean into that, when I think transactional, I'm always going to be let down because something's always going to be unequal. That's life. Welcome to life. Life isn't fair. Read the story of Job. Life isn't fair. But I go from those emotions and those feelings on average from suffering, despair, hatred, anger, to peace, joy, contentment. That's really what I want. I think that's what a lot of people want. And for me, when I lean into God's will, those things end up happening. I start to experience that. Whereas when I go into my will, I completely experience, even though I might get some highs, there's always those inevitable lows. My highs aren't as high, especially not doing drugs and alcohol, but my lows aren't as low. I have this sense of even keel and even peace. And I think that's, for me, one of the big motivating factors to stick with giving my will and my life over to God, because that's what I really want. I thought I wanted to get high and have these highs and feel good all the time, but you always have the lows when you have those highs. And really, I'm not really after those big highs. I really want the peace. So for me, that's the difference between my will and God's will. I find this sense of peace. I have much more acceptance. And, if things don't work out, I still have that acceptance and I have peace. Whereas when it was in my will, things don't work out, it's the end of the world. I hate everyone. I hate myself. I hate the world. That's not a good place to be. So how's it working out for you? Do you follow that? Do you lean into God's will? Are you in your own will? I'd like to hear from you because I think this is a good conversation to have. Whether you have a religious background or not, for me, I don't follow one religion, but I follow my own path. And through that path is, again, kind of getting rid of myself and asking God, what do you really want from me? And when I notice that it's more, hey, transactional, oh, I'm expecting something, that's probably not God's will. When I'm looking at things and I have no idea what's about to happen and it's outside my comfort zone, those are things that I tend to notice that are more God's will. So that's what I got. I want to hear from you and see if you've experienced some of this as well. For me, I get that peace of mind, which is what I'm really after.